Hello and welcome to Art History with Miss Zoe. With me, your host, Miss Zoe. Today, we will be learning about the Italian Renaissance. And you might wonder, what is the Italian Renaissance? The Italian Renaissance was a time of creative exploration from around 1300 to 1600 CE. Famous artists from this time are Leonardo da Vinci and Michelangelo. During the Renaissance, people were curious about science and new ideas. It was a time of discovery and learning, which helped shape how we think and create today. What kind of art did they make? They made a lot of art. Renaissance artists were very prolific, which means they made a lot of artwork. But they are most famous for their architecture, sculpture, and painting. Today we're going to learn about the Ninja Turtles of the Renaissance. You might not have known that the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles are named for 4 famous Renaissance artists. Those artists are Leonardo da Vinci, Donatello, Raphael, and Michelangelo de Buonarroti. Donatello was a Florentine painter and sculptor. He was active before the other 4 famous artists, and he helped develop the style of the Renaissance before his death in the late 15th century. One of Donatello's most famous sculptures is his sculpture of Saint Mark. It was commissioned to stand outside the church of San Michele in Florence. As you can see, Saint Mark is holding a book to signify that he is an evangelist or one of the 4 men who wrote the Gospels in the Christian Bible. He is standing in contrapposto, which means that he is shifting his weight to one leg. Portraying the human body as it behaves in real life was very important during the Renaissance. Leonardo da Vinci was a painter, draftsman, mathematician, scientist, architect, and engineer, so you can safely say that he was a Renaissance man. His many interests made him a better artist. He worked primarily during the early 16th century, and his work influenced many other artists, including Raphael, who we'll talk about later. The Mona Lisa is best known for the enigmatic expression of the sitter. The portrait is thought to be of Lisa del Giocondo, but Da Vinci never gave the painting to the family. It currently resides in the Louvre in Paris on permanent display. However, the reason that the painting is so famous is because it was stolen in 1911 when Vincenzo Peruggia stole it for Italian patriotism. He was stealing it from the French Louvre to take it back to his Italian homeland. Since being stolen in 1911 by Vincenzo Peruggia, the painting has been vandalized, shot at, and copied multiple times by many different artists. Raphael was a Renaissance painter. As I mentioned earlier, he was highly influenced by the work of Leonardo da Vinci and also Michelangelo. Unfortunately, he died at the early age of 37, and so we don't have many paintings by him. However, one of his most famous paintings is a fresco that is in the Vatican in Rome. It is most popularly known as the School of Athens. In the painting, Raphael has brought together all of the great minds of the ancient world into one place. Notable figures in the painting include Aristotle, Plato, Heraclitus, Archimedes, and Pythagoras. The figure of Plato is a portrait of Leonardo da Vinci, and Michelangelo is portrayed as Heraclitus. Other important artists of the day are also portrayed as various philosophers throughout the composition. Michelangelo de Buonarroti was a painter and sculptor, although if you asked him, he would say that he was only a sculptor. He was active the latest of the four artists, meaning that he worked well into the 16th century. He died at the old age of 88. One of his most famous sculptures is La Pietà. It is an enormous marble statue that is housed in St. Peter's Basilica in the Vatican. The scene depicted is Mary, mother of Jesus, holding her son after he was removed from the cross. Another fun fact about the sculpture is that after Michelangelo installed it in the Vatican, he overheard someone saying that another artist made it. This made him very angry, and so that night he went back and engraved his name across the sash on her chest. It reads, "Michelangelo Buonarroti, the Florentine, made this." It is the only work that he ever signed. One of the things that all of these artists have in common is that they used something called direct observation. Direct observation is when the artist observes what is directly in front of them and tries to sculpt it or paint it or draw it exactly as they see it. You might do this with a bowl of fruit, with a flower, with a human, or with a landscape. The point is you are trying to draw, paint, sculpt whatever's in front of you exactly as it appears. So, for today's art activity, we are going to use direct observation with clay. We are going to use clay to recreate the objects in front of us. I want you to try to get it to be the same size, shape, and texture as the object in front of you. Then, next week, once our clay has dried, we will get to try to make it the same color as the objects we used for inspiration. For this project, you will need air-dry clay, markers, and sculpting tools. If you don't have sculpting tools, that's okay. You can make do without them. Now that we have everything that we need, let's get started. So I've gathered my air-dry clay and a few options to use as reference. I've got water, and I have what's called a fettling knife. It's a clay modeling tool. So I decided to go with the crayon because I like jumbo crayons. I think they're really fun. And so now I'm just going to start off by getting my workspace organized, and then I will roll out a coil. And you'll notice that I'm using my fingers and not my palms to roll out this coil. And then I'm making nice big movements. That'll give you a nice round coil instead of a flat coil. So I'm trying to roll it out the same diameter, and then I'm going to cut it to the same length. And then I'm going to do my best to get that top to look exactly like the crayon. I ended up cutting off the tip to make it a little easier and to make my lines nice and clean. You can see that I tested it a few times, took it off, put it back on. I also used water to smooth my clay out because it started to get a little crackly. So I added water. And once I had everything how I wanted it, I did a final check against my crayon. And then I added a little line for my paper, cover of the crayon. And then I put the rest of my clay up into a plastic bag so it doesn't dry out. And I'm going to go ahead and let this dry out overnight to come back tomorrow to color it. So now it's been 12 hours and I've let this thing dry out, and I'm going to go ahead and start coloring my sculpture. So I noticed that the label is a lighter color than the crayon, so I used a lighter Sharpie to color the label. I wasn't too worried about finding the exact same color. And so I went ahead and colored everything in. And once everything was colored on the base, I went ahead and started adding the details of the label. Again, I wasn't too worried about getting everything to look exactly the same, but I did my best to make it match as well as I could. When I got to the words, I actually ran out of room for like every single section of words, so I did my best, but I wasn't too worried about it. Again, it's okay to make mistakes, and I just moved on with my life. And that's about it. So this is my copy of a jumbo crayon. Thanks for watching, and keep making.